I signed the deed to my beach house at 10 in the morning, by noon. My sister called to announce she was arriving in 2 hours with 12 friends and a camera crew. I told her sure, but not because I was rolling over. I said yes, because I needed her to walk straight into the trap established by the strict community bylaws. She showed up waving legal papers she thought were a weapon, but they were actually her signed confession. My name is Riley Hughes, and I had just spent every cent I had to purchase silence. The ink was barely dry on the closing documents, a stack of paper thick enough to stop a bullet, which currently sat on the passenger seat of my SUV. I had signed my name so many times that my hand cramped, a dull ache that felt surprisingly like victory. I was 32 years old, and for the first time in my life, I held a set of keys that did not belong to my parents, did not belong to a landlord, and certainly did not belong to my family trust. I turned off the main coastal highway and guided my car toward the entrance of Seaglass Dunes. The gate was imposing, a wrought iron barrier that looked less like a welcome mat and more like a warning. To most people, Seaglass Dunes was terrifying. It was a planned coastal community known for bylaws so strict they bordered on martial law. They had rules about the color of your curtains, the length of your grass, the decibel level of your laughter, and the specific hours you were allowed to take your trash bins to the curb. Most buyers found the homeowners association here suffocating. They called the board members tyrants and the security guards overzealous. I did not see tyranny. I saw structure. I saw a fortress. I bought this house specifically because I knew that in Seaglass Dunes, chaos was not just frowned upon, it was contractually illegal. The guard at the gatehouse, a man with a posture so rigid he could have been carved from granite, checked my identification against his clipboard. He did not smile. He simply nodded, verified my new status as the owner of the property on Driftglass Lane, and lifted the barrier as I drove through. The silence hit me. It was not the empty silence of a desert, but the curated, expensive silence of order. The lawns were manicured to military precision. The ocean breeze seemed to move respectfully through the palm trees. There were no screaming children, no barking dogs, and no loud music. It was perfect. I pulled into the driveway of my new home. It was a contemporary structure, all clean lines, white stucco, and vast panels of glass that reflected the gray blue of the Atlantic. It looked like a deep breath manifested in architecture. I killed the engine and just sat there for a moment, listening to the ticking of the cooling motor and the distant, rhythmic crash of the waves. I felt my shoulders, which had been permanently hunched near my ears for the last decade, finally begin to drop. I walked to the front door, punched in the temporary code the realtor had given me, and stepped inside. The air inside was cool and smelled faintly of lemon polish and sea salt. The house was sold fully furnished, a condition of the sale that suited me perfectly because I did not want to bring a single item from my old life into this one. I walked through the foyer, my heels clicking on the polished concrete floors. The living room opened up to a panoramic view of the dunes and the water beyond. I stood in the center of the room, closing my eyes, letting the stillness wash over me. I was alone. I was safe. I was finally, truly unreachable. Then, the phone in my pocket buzzed against my hip. It was not a polite notification ping. It was a long, jarring vibration that demanded attention. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. The name displayed was Tessa, my sister. A knot of anxiety, familiar and cold, tightened instantly in my stomach. I debated letting it go to voicemail. I stared at the screen, watching the name flash, imagining the peace remaining unbroken if I just pressed the decline button. But habits formed over a lifetime are hard to break, and the fear of the inevitable fallout was stronger than my desire for quiet. If I did not answer, she would call our mother. If I did not answer our mother, they would call the police to do a welfare check. Or worse, they would simply show up faster. I slid my thumb across the screen and lifted the phone to my ear. I did not say hello. I did not have to. "We are on the highway," Tessa said. There was no greeting. There was no congratulations on the house purchase. Even though she knew today was the closing day, there was just the sound of wind rushing past a microphone and the chaotic background noise of multiple people laughing and shouting. "Hello, Tessa," I said, my voice sounding thin in the empty cavern of the living room. "Yeah, hi," she dismissed, her voice rising over the background noise. "Listen, plans changed. The venue for the retreat fell through. Total nightmare. Don't even ask. So I told everyone, hey, my baby sister just bought this massive place on the water, and she would literally die if we didn't come bless the space." I gripped the phone tighter. "What?" "We are 2 hours away," Tessa announced, the cheerfulness in her tone sounding sharp and synthetic. "It is me and 12 others. You need to send me the gate code now because the service is spotty on the coast, and I don't want to be stuck outside waiting for you to answer a text." 12 people? I repeated. I turned to look at the pristine white sofa, the delicate glass coffee table, the open-concept kitchen that was currently spotless. "Tessa, I just walked in the door. I haven't even unpacked a bag. I don't have food. I don't have— Oh, don't worry about food." She cut me off. "We are bringing some snacks, but we are going to need a real dinner when we get there. You can run to the store. We want fresh seafood. Obviously. Get 4 or 5 bottles of white wine. Good wine. Riley. Not the cheap stuff you usually buy. Chill them. Oh, and make sure the hot tub is on. Is there a hot tub? The listing said there was a hot tub." She had looked at the listing. She had been tracking this. "Tessa," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I am not set up for guests. This is my first day." "It is not guests. It is family," she snapped, the cheerfulness vanishing instantly, replaced by the tone she used when I was being difficult. "And it is my production team. We are going to be shooting content for the new wellness series. It is a huge opportunity. Riley, we need the aesthetic. The lighting at that beach is supposed to be incredible." She paused to yell something at someone in the car with her, laughing loudly, before returning her attention to me. "Anyway, we are staying for a month. Maybe 6 weeks if the vibe is right. You have 4 bedrooms, right? I will take the master suite because I need the best light for the morning vlogs. The crew can double up in the other rooms. You can take the sofa. It looks big enough in the photos." I stood frozen. The audacity was breathless. It was not just an intrusion. It was an eviction. She was telling me, on the day I bought my sanctuary, that I was going to be a guest in my own home, sleeping on a couch while she and her entourage destroyed the peace I had paid for. "A month," I said. It was not a question. "Yes, a month. Don't be dramatic. We are going to make your house famous. You should be thanking me." She sounded bored now, as if explaining basic concepts to a slow child. "So, clean up anything ugly. I don't want your boxes in the background of my shots. And get those towels ready, white ones, fluffy ones. If you don't have enough, go buy some. Do not embarrass me in front of the crew. Riley, these are influencers. They have millions of followers." I looked out the window. A security patrol car was slowly cruising down the street. A silent white vehicle with amber lights flashing softly. The officer inside turned his head, scanning the properties, noting anything out of place. In the past, I would have begged. I would have explained that I was tired, that I needed space, that this was unfair. I would have cried, and Tessa would have recorded my crying, posted it with a caption about toxic family energy, and then come anyway. She thrived on the resistance. She fed on the drama. If I said no, she would make it her mission to break in just to prove she could. But if I said yes, she would walk in with her guard down. She would walk in thinking the rules of our family applied here. She thought that because we were blood, she could bulldoze through my boundaries. But she forgot that we were not just in a house anymore. We were in sea glass dunes. And in sea glass dunes, family ties did not override the homeowners association covenants. I took a breath. I let the anger drain out of my voice, replacing it with a flat, hollow compliance. "Sure," I said. There was a pause on the other end of the line. The silence stretched for 3 seconds. Tessa had been ready for a fight. She had her arguments loaded, her guilt trips primed. My immediate agreement threw her off balance. "Sure?" she repeated, suspicious. "Sure," I said again, looking at the heavy leather binder sitting on the kitchen island, the welcome package from the community management. "Come over. 2 hours. I will be here." "Okay," she said slowly, dragging the word out. She sounded almost disappointed that she didn't get to scream at me, but then her narcissism kicked back in, overriding her suspicion. "Good. At least you are finally being supportive for once. Remember, 2 hours, 12 people, master suite is mine. Don't screw this up." The line went dead. I lowered the phone and stared at the black screen. My hand was not shaking. That surprised me. Usually, after a conversation with Tessa, I would be trembling with a mixture of rage and helplessness. But today, standing in the cool air of my new home, I felt something else. I felt cold. I felt precise. "Peace," I whispered to the empty room. "I bought this for peace." But peace was not a passive state. You did not just find peace and keep it. Peace was territory, and when invaders came to the border, you did not negotiate with them. You defended the line. I walked over to the kitchen island. The welcome binder was thick, bound in navy blue leather with the Sea Glass Dunes logo embossed in gold foil on the cover. It looked like a legal indictment. Most new homeowners toss this in a drawer, skimming it only to find out when trash day was. I opened it. I flipped past the welcome letter from the board of directors. I flipped past the map of the tennis courts and the private beach access points. I went straight to the section that my realtor had warned me about with a grimace, the section that most buyers found draconian and unreasonable. Section 4. Occupancy and Guest Conduct. I ran my finger down the page. Tracing the fine print, the text was dense, but the words were unambiguous. Clause 4.1. Maximum occupancy limitations for overnight guests are strictly enforced to maintain community tranquility and infrastructure integrity. Clause 4.2. Unregistered guests exceeding the limitation of 6 persons per dwelling are considered a violation of community covenants. Clause 4.3. Any guest staying longer than 72 hours must be registered with the security office. Failure to register guests will result in immediate removal of unauthorized persons and fines levied against the homeowner. Clause 4.5. Commercial activity, including but not limited to professional filming, production crews, or business retreats, is strictly prohibited within residential zones without a permit approved by the board 30 days in advance. I read the words again. Maximum 6 persons. Tessa was bringing 12. Commercial activity strictly prohibited. She was bringing a camera crew. Immediate removal. I looked up from the binder. The view outside was still serene, the ocean still rolling in with hypnotic regularity. Tessa thought she was coming to a family home where she could bully her little sister into sleeping on the couch. She thought she was the main character in a reality show where everyone else was just a prop. She was wrong. She was driving a convoy of 12 people into a legal bear trap. I reached into my purse and pulled out the closing documents I had signed that morning. I found the deed. I found the page where I had initialed that I had read, understood, and agreed to abide by all community rules and regulations. I was not going to stop her from coming. I was going to let her arrive. I was going to let her unload her cameras and her lights and her entitlement. I was going to let her believe, for just a moment, that she had won again. And then, I was going to let the rules of Sea Glass Dunes do what I had never been able to do. I picked up my phone, but I did not call the grocery store for wine. I did not call a cleaning service for towels. I unlocked the screen and opened the folder I had created the moment I signed the papers. I renamed the folder from New House to Evidence. Then, I dialed the number for the Harborline Community Management Office. I needed to speak to someone about registering a complaint against myself, or rather, against the unauthorized occupants who were about to invade my property. I checked the time. 1 hour and 58 minutes until showtime. I sat down on one of the bar stools, opened the binder to the page regarding trespassing protocols, and began to read. I read every word. I memorized the clauses. I absorbed the penalties. The sun streamed in through the window, bathing the kitchen in warm, golden light. But I felt icy sharp. My sister wanted a reality show? Fine. I was about to give her the most realistic episode of her life. The silence in the house was no longer empty. It was waiting. I placed my phone on the quartz countertop, the screen facing down, and moved to the back of the house. The sliding glass doors leading to the patio were heavy, impact-resistant glass designed to withstand hurricane-force winds. I engaged the physical latch, listening for the solid, satisfying thud of the bolt sliding home. Then I crouched down and engaged the secondary footlock at the base of the frame. It was a small piece of metal, barely noticeable, but it meant that even if someone picked the main lock, the door would not slide more than an inch. I moved through the rooms with the efficiency of a crime scene investigator. I checked the windows in the guest bedrooms. I checked the service entrance in the laundry room. I checked the garage access. Every latch was tested. Every seal was verified. The physical perimeter was secure. But in a place like Sea Glass Dunes, physical locks were the last line of defense. The real walls were digital. I picked up my phone again and opened the smart home application. The realtor had transferred the master administrator privileges to me less than 6 hours ago. I watched the little circles spin as the app connected to the hub. And then the dashboard appeared. It gave me a godlike view of the property. I could see the temperature in the living room, the humidity levels in the crawl space, and, most importantly, the status of the front door smart lock. I tapped the Users tab. Currently, there were 3 active codes, one for the realtor, one for the cleaning crew, and one master code that I had been given. I deleted the realtor. I deleted the cleaning crew. Then I stared at the master code. It was a simple 4-digit string, something generic like 1234. I wiped it. In its place, I generated a new, complex 10-digit PIN that I committed to memory. I did not write it down. I did not save it in my Notes app. I locked it in my head. Next, I went to the Guest Access feature. This was the feature Tessa was banking on. The ability for a homeowner to generate a temporary code and text it to a visitor. I toggled the setting to disabled. Even if I wanted to let someone in during a moment of weakness, I would have to log back in, re-enable the system, and go through a 2-step verification process. I was building speed bumps for my own potential guilt. I returned to the kitchen island and the navy blue binder. I needed to know the battlefield terrain before the enemy arrived. I flipped past the occupancy limits I had already read and looked for the enforcement protocols. Rules were useless without consequences, and I needed to know exactly what the consequences were. I found them in a subsection titled Compliance and Escalation. It read, "First notice of violation may be verbal or written. Continued non-compliance or immediate threat to community order will result in the deployment of Sea Glass Dunes Security Patrol. Security personnel are authorized to escort non-residents from the premises." Authorized to escort. That was the phrase I needed. I looked at the contact information on the first page of the binder. Harborline Community Management. There was a direct line for owner services. I dialed the number. It rang once, twice, and then a click. Harborline Community Management. This is Carmen Stiles speaking. How may I assist you? The voice was perfect. It was dry, clipped, and devoid of any warmth. It was the voice of a woman who spent her day telling people they could not paint their mailbox red. To most people, Carmen Stiles would be a bureaucrat to be avoided. To me, right now, she sounded like an angel of justice. "Hi, Carmen," I said. "My name is Riley Hughes. I am the new owner of the property on Driftglass Lane. I closed this morning." "Welcome to Sea Glass Dunes, Ms. Hughes," she said. She did not sound like she meant it, which was exactly what I wanted. She sounded like she was pulling up a file. "I see your transfer of title here. All looks in order. Do you have a question about the trash schedule?" "No," I said. "I have a question about security protocols regarding trespassing." There was a brief pause on the line. The typing in the background stopped. "Go on." "I have a hypothetical situation," I said, keeping my voice steady. "If a group of people were to arrive at my gate, claiming to be my guests, claiming they had permission to stay for a month. But I, the owner, did not invite them and do not want them there. What is the protocol? Are they on your permanent guest list? Carmen asked. No. Have you issued them a guest pass through the portal? No. Then they do not get in. Carmen said simply, the gate guard will turn them away. What if they get past the gate? I asked. What if they tailgate another car? Or what if they are already inside the perimeter because they claimed they were visiting someone else? If they show up at my front door with luggage and refuse to leave? What does Harbor Line do? Carmen's voice dropped an octave, shifting from administrative to authoritative. Ms. Hughes, Seaglass Dunes is a private community. If individuals are on your property without your consent, they are trespassing. If you call the security dispatch, we will send a patrol unit immediately. Our officers will ask them to leave. If they refuse, we call the county sheriff. And the fact that they might be family members? I asked. Does that change anything? If they claim it is a civil dispute? The deed is in your name, correct? Carmen asked. Solely in my name. Then their relationship to you is irrelevant, Carmen stated. Unless they are on the deed or have a lease agreement filed with our office, they are visitors. And a visitor without an invitation is a trespasser. We take our residents' privacy very strictly here. It is why you pay the association fees. Thank you, Carmen, I said. I need to file a preemptive notice. Go ahead. I am expecting a convoy of 3 or 4 cars to attempt entry in approximately 90 minutes. The lead driver is named Tessa Hughes. They are not authorized. Under no circumstances are they to be allowed access to my property. If they manage to reach my driveway, I want it on record that I have requested their removal. I will log that in the dispatch notes right now, Carmen said. Her typing speed increased. It sounded like heavy rain on a tin roof. I need you to send an email to the security supervisor verifying this request. Just so we have a paper trail, attach a copy of your driver's license. I am sending it now, I said. Done, Carmen said. Is there anything else? One more thing, I said. If they have cameras? If they are filming? Commercial filming is a violation of the covenants, Carmen said, and for the first time. I heard a hint of actual annoyance in her voice. We have zero tolerance for unauthorized media production. It violates the privacy of the other residents. If they are filming, security will be very interested to know that. Understood. Thank you. I hung up. The conversation had lasted less than 4 minutes, but it had erected a wall thicker than the stucco surrounding me. I opened my laptop. I did not let myself hesitate. I drafted the email to the security supervisor. I kept it short. Emotion was for victims. Documentation was for owners. Subject: access denied. Driftglass Lane. To whom it may concern. I, Riley Hughes, owner of the property on Driftglass Lane, hereby deny access to Tessa Hughes and any associates accompanying her. No individuals are authorized to enter my property or the community on my behalf. Any attempt to enter is unauthorized. Please consider this a formal request for enforcement of trespassing protocols. I attached the photo of my license. Then, I walked out the front door, stood in the driveway, and took a clear, high-resolution photo of the front of the house, showing the house number clearly. I attached that too, so there could be no confusion about which fortress was currently under lockdown. I hit send. I watched the progress bar slide across the top of the screen. Message sent. I went back to the Smart Lock app. I had one more code to generate. I created a new user profile labeled Security. I assigned it a code that was active starting now and expiring in 24 hours. If Carmen sent her people, I did not want to have to come to the door to let them in. I wanted them to be able to access the property if I needed help, without me having to break my seal. Finally, I opened my text messages. I scrolled up to the last message Tessa had sent. Mang thêm khăn, đừng làm tao mất mặt trước bạn tao. Bring extra towels. Don't embarrass me in front of my friends. And the one before that, hai tiếng nữa tao tới. 12 người, mang theo camera. I'm coming in 2 hours. 12 people. Bringing cameras. I took a screenshot. I cropped the image so the timestamp and the sender's name were clearly visible. I opened the file properties and checked the metadata. Ensuring the date and time were embedded in the file, I created a new folder on my laptop desktop. I named it Seaglass. Inside that, I created a subfolder named Evidence. I dragged the screenshot into the folder. I looked at the screen, a picture of a text message, a PDF of a deed, a screenshot of a security log. These were boring, mundane digital artifacts. They looked nothing like the weapons I was used to seeing in movies. But as I sat there in the cool, quiet kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, I realized they were far more dangerous than anything Tessa could scream at me. She was bringing noise. She was bringing emotional manipulation. She was bringing the chaotic, messy history of our childhood where she was the star and I was the prop. I was bringing the law. I did not feel happy. There was no surge of adrenaline or vindictive joy. My heart was beating at a steady, resting pace. I felt a strange, heavy clarity. It was the feeling of boarding up windows before a hurricane. You do not hate the hurricane. You do not laugh at the hurricane. You respect the destruction it is capable of, and you do the work to ensure that when the wind stops, you are still standing. I closed the laptop. I walked to the refrigerator, took out a pitcher of filtered water, and poured myself a glass. I drank it standing up, looking out at the dunes. The clock on the microwave read 1:15 in the afternoon. They were 45 minutes away. I was ready. The trap was not just set. It was cemented, filed, and digitally encrypted. Now, all I had to do was wait for them to step on the trigger. The digital numbers on the microwave clock shifted from 1:59 to 2 o'clock. Precision. My sister was many things. Chaotic, selfish, overwhelming. But she was never late when she believed she was the star of the show. Punctuality was part of her performance. If the call time was 2 o'clock, she arrived at 2 o'clock because the sun was at the right angle and she wanted to maximize the golden hour for her initial walkthrough footage. I stood in the living room, my back pressed against the cool white wall next to the floor-to-ceiling window. I did not stand in the open. I was hidden behind the sheer linen curtain, a ghost in my own home, watching the street through the gauzy fabric. They arrived like an invading army disguised as a carnival. The first vehicle to turn onto Driftglass Lane was a black Suburban, an oversized beast that looked ridiculous on the narrow, manicured street. It was followed immediately by a white convertible with the top down, despite the wind, and a third SUV that appeared to be packed to the roof with equipment cases. They did not slow down to admire the architecture or respect the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. They claimed the asphalt. They drove down the center of the road, forcing a neighbor walking a golden retriever to step up onto the grass. I watched them pull up to my driveway. The lead SUV blocked the apron. The convertible pulled up onto the swale, crushing the perfect line of decorative dune grass that the landscaping crew had trimmed just yesterday. The third car double-parked in the street, hazard lights flashing, effectively turning a public road into their private loading zone. The doors opened in unison. Tessa was the first one out. She stepped out of the passenger side of the black Suburban. She was wearing a flowing white linen dress and an oversized straw hat, an outfit clearly curated to match the coastal grandmother aesthetic that was trending on social media that week, before her feet even touched the pavement. Her phone was in her hand. It was mounted on a stabilizer gimbal, held high. The lens pointed back at her face. I could not hear her through the impact glass, but I knew exactly what she was saying. She was doing the intro. "Hey guys, we are finally here. Look at this paradise. My little sister bought this place, and we are going to break it in." She spun around, panning the camera across the front of my house. She smiled that wide, practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. The smile that looked generous on a screen but felt predatory in person. Then the others spilled out. I counted them. 1. A tall guy with a camera rig that looked expensive enough to require insurance. 2. A girl carrying a ring light and a makeup case. 3, 4, 5. A group of young women in matching oversized t-shirts, dragging carry-on suitcases. 6. A guy in a backward baseball cap hauling a cooler that likely contained the cheap beer Tessa would insist was craft brew for the video. 7, 8. They kept coming. It was like a clown car trick, except nothing about this was funny. 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 people, plus Tessa. 13 human beings were currently standing on my driveway, stretching, laughing, and beginning to unload enough luggage to colonize a small island. They were loud. Even through the soundproof glass, I could sense the volume. They were shouting over the roof of the cars, slamming trunk lids, dragging plastic wheels over the paved stones. It was a violation. It was a takeover. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Tessa. "We are outside. Open the garage. We have a ton of gear." I did not reply. I did not move. I just watched. Tessa frowned at her phone. She looked up at the house, her eyes scanning the windows. For a second, her gaze swept over the curtain where I was hiding, and my heart hammered against my ribs. But she did not see me. She saw a reflection of herself in the glass. She paused to fix her hair in the reflection, then turned back to her crew, waving her arm, directing them to start stacking the luggage by the front door. She reached for the door handle. She pulled. It was locked. She tried the keypad. She punched in the old code she had memorized from our parents' house. Her birthday. Red light. She punched in my birthday. Red light. She stepped back, looking annoyed. She typed furiously on her phone. "Riley, the code isn't working." "Hello?" That was when the white sedan turned the corner. It was not a flashy car. It was a standard-issue security vehicle, white with a thin blue stripe and the Seaglass Dunes emblem on the door. It moved silently, like a shark gliding through shallow water. It did not use a siren. It did not flash lights. It simply rolled up behind the double-parked SUV and stopped. Darius Cole stepped out. I had never met Darius Cole, but Carmen on the phone had described the security supervisor as thorough. That was an understatement. Darius was a mountain of a man, wearing a uniform that was pressed so sharp it could cut paper. He wore dark sunglasses and held a black clipboard against his chest. He did not have a gun. This was a private community, not a war zone, but he carried himself with an authority that made weapons unnecessary. He walked up the driveway. He did not rush. He walked with the measured pace of a man who was paid by the hour to enforce rules that were written in stone. Tessa saw him. Her immediate reaction was to smile. It was her reflex. When in doubt, charm. She lowered the gimbal slightly, but she did not stop recording. She turned the camera toward Darius, incorporating him into her narrative. I imagined the caption she was already writing in her head. "Even the security here is intense. Security check." "Hi there," Tessa called out. I could see her mouth moving clearly now as she walked down the driveway to meet him. She waved a manicured hand. "We are just unloading. Sorry about the car in the street. We will move it in 2 seconds. Just getting the bags inside." Darius did not smile back. He did not wave. He stopped 6 feet away from her, the exact distance recommended for maintaining a defensive perimeter. He looked at the cars. He looked at the pile of luggage. He looked at the 12 people who had paused in their unloading to watch the interaction. Then he looked back at Tessa. He said something. I saw his lips move. Short, concise sentences. Tessa laughed. It was a high, tinkling sound. She touched her hair. She pointed at the house. She was explaining. "My sister lives here. It is fine. We are family." Darius looked down at his clipboard. He ran his finger down a list. He shook his head. Tessa's smile faltered. The mask slipped. Just a fraction. She gestured wider. Encompassing the whole group, she pointed at the camera again, as if the lens itself was a passport that granted her immunity. Darius ignored the camera completely. He lifted the clipboard and tapped a piece of paper attached to the front. The no trespass directive. I saw Tessa's posture stiffen. The coastal grandmother, relaxed vibe evaporated, replaced by the rigid indignation of a woman who had never been told no in her life. She stepped closer to him. She was arguing now. The group of friends behind her began to shift. The energy in the driveway changed. The guy with the cooler set it down on the pavement. The girl with the ring light lowered it to her side. They looked at each other. They were influencers and hangers-on. They possessed a sixth sense for social embarrassment, and the air was suddenly thick with it. I needed to hear this. I moved away from the window and walked to the wall panel that controlled the smart home features. I tapped the icon for the front door video doorbell. The feed popped up on the screen, crystal clear, and the audio filtered into the silent hallway. "Misunderstanding," Tessa was saying, her voice sharp and loud through the speakers. "I am telling you, this is my sister's house. I am Tessa Hughes. Riley knows we are coming. We texted 10 minutes ago." "I have the owner's directive right here, ma'am," Darius said. His voice was deep, calm, and utterly bored. "Ms. Hughes has filed a formal notice. No unauthorized guests. No access granted to Tessa Hughes or associates." "That is ridiculous," Tessa scoffed. She turned to the camera, addressing her invisible audience. "Can you believe this? My sister is playing a prank. She is so dramatic." She turned back to Darius. "Look, just let us in. I will call her and sort it out once we are inside. We have perishable food in these coolers." "You are not going inside," Darius said. "And you are blocking the roadway. That is a separate violation." "We are family!" Tessa shouted. She was losing control of her volume. "We are here for a wholesome family retreat. We are just going to hang out, cook dinner, and take some pictures. We are not criminals." Darius looked at the 12 people standing behind her. He looked at the professional lighting rig. He looked at the reflector shields leaning against the black SUV. "Community Covenant Article 4, Darius recited from memory, his tone flat. "Maximum occupancy for overnight guests is 6. You have 13. Unregistered guests are a violation. Commercial filming is a violation." "It is not commercial," Tessa argued. "It is for social media. It is lifestyle content." "That is commercial activity," Darius said. "And regardless of the numbers, the homeowner has not authorized your entry without owner consent. You are trespassing." Tessa laughed again, but it was a harsh, barking sound. "Owner consent? She is my little sister. Since when do I need a piece of paper to visit my own family?" Darius paused. He looked at her over the rim of his sunglasses. For the first time, he seemed to take a personal interest in the conversation. He delivered the line with the precision of a sniper. "Written consent is required for people who want boundaries, ma'am." The silence that followed was absolute. On the driveway, the guy holding the heavy camera case looked down at his feet. One of the girls in the matching t-shirts whispered something to her friend, and they both took a step back toward the cars. They were realizing that this was not a quirky complication for the vlog. This was a rejection. Tessa stood there, her mouth slightly open. She blinked. The script in her head had jammed. She was used to people bending. She was used to people saying, "Okay, just this once," or "Fine, come in. Let's not make a scene." She was not used to a wall that did not care about her follower count. "I am not leaving," Tessa said. Her voice dropped, becoming low and venomous. "I drove 2 hours. I have a schedule. I have sponsors who are expecting content from this location." "Then you have a problem with your sponsors," Darius said. "You have 5 minutes to clear the driveway and remove these vehicles from Seaglass Dunes property. If you remain after 5 minutes, I will contact the sheriff's department to assist with a trespass removal." "You would call the cops on a young woman?" Tessa demanded. "Playing the victim card now. Because I want to visit my sister?" "I would call the sheriff on an intruder who refuses to comply with a vacate order," Darius corrected. He looked at his watch. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. He turned his back on her. He walked back to his patrol car, leaned against the hood, and crossed his arms. He was not leaving. He was the clock ticking down. Tessa spun around to face her friends. She looked frantic. "Guys, don't worry. It is just a mix-up. Riley is probably in the shower or something. She probably forgot to tell the gate." "Tessa," the guy with the expensive camera said. He said she filed a specific notice against you, by name. He is lying, Tessa snapped. He is just some power-tripping rent-a-cop. Riley wouldn't do that. She doesn't have the guts. She turned toward the house. She looked right at the front door. Her eyes narrowed. She stepped forward, past the luggage, past the line of decency, and marched up the front walkway. She pounded on the door. Bang, bang, bang. "Riley!" she screamed. "Riley! Open this door right now! Stop playing games! You are embarrassing me!" I watched her on the monitor. Her face was distorted by the wide-angle lens of the doorbell camera, making her look grotesque, her mouth a gaping cavern of rage. "Riley! I know you are in there. I see your car in the garage window." She pounded again. She kicked the bottom of the door. Behind her, Darius pushed himself off the hood of his car. He unclipped the radio from his belt. He did not run, but he moved faster this time. The friends were retreating. They were opening car doors. They were whispering loudly. "Dude, this is sketchy," I heard the guy with the cooler say. "I'm not getting arrested for a beach trip." "She said it was cleared," one of the girls hissed. "She said she owned the place." "This is going to be a disaster," the camera guy muttered. But I noticed he didn't put his camera away. He was still filming. He was filming Tessa screaming at the door. He was filming the security guard walking up behind her. The drama Tessa wanted was happening, but for the first time, she wasn't the director. She was the subject. I stood in the hallway, my hand resting on the cool plaster of the wall. I did not feel fear. I felt a strange, detached sadness. She really believed it. She really believed that if she screamed loud enough, the door would open. She believed that her will was the only key that mattered. I reached out and touched the talk button on the smart panel. My voice would project out to the speaker on the doorbell. It would be loud, it would be clear, and it would be final. I took a breath. I pressed the button. I stared at the talk button on the wall panel, my finger hovering just millimeters from the plastic surface. The easy thing to do would be to speak through the intercom. It was safe. It was detached. I could tell her to leave without ever having to look into her eyes, without having to smell her perfume or see the way her jaw tightened when she was denied what she wanted. But hiding behind a speaker was what the old Riley would have done. The old Riley avoided conflict. The old Riley smoothed things over. The old Riley would have been terrified that opening the door meant inviting the chaos inside. This house was not built for the old Riley. I pulled my hand back from the panel. I was not going to hide. If I spoke through a machine, she would tell herself that I was scared. She would tell her friends that I was hiding in the bathroom crying. She would spin the narrative that I was fragile, and she was the strong, concerned big sister trying to save me from myself. I needed to be seen. I needed to be the physical embodiment of the boundary I had just drawn. I walked to the front door. The hallway felt owls long, the silence amplified by the thudding of my own heart, not in fear, but in a strange, cold anticipation. I reached the heavy oak door. I could hear Tessa on the other side. She was not screaming anymore. She was talking in that low, furious whisper she used when she was trying to organize a plan of attack. I gripped the deadbolt. It was a heavy, solid piece of brass. I turned it. Click. The sound was loud in the quiet foyer. On the other side of the door. The whispering stopped instantly. I turned the handle and pulled the door open. I did not swing it wide. I did not step out onto the porch to meet her. I opened it just enough to fill the frame with my body. I planted my feet on the threshold, my hand gripping the edge of the door, turning my arm into a barricade. I stayed inside the air conditioning, inside the legal perimeter of my property, while the humid, salty air of the afternoon hit my face. Tessa was standing less than 2 feet away. She looked shocking. Usually on Instagram, she was filtered to perfection, a soft focus vision of wellness and ease. Here, in the harsh, unforgiving sunlight of the coast, she looked frantic. Her hair was frizzy from the humidity. There was a sheen of sweat on her upper lip. Her eyes were wide, manic, darting between me and the phone she was still clutching in her hand. The moment she saw me, the camera came up. It was a reflex. She thrust the lens into my face like a microphone. the black eye of the device recording my every micro-expression. "Finally," she hissed. But then she remembered the audience. She pitched her voice up, performing for the invisible millions. "Riley, oh my God, why are you locking us out? We have been standing here for 10 minutes. It is boiling out here." She tried to step forward. She tried to push past me into the cool sanctuary of the foyer. I did not move. I did not flinch. I tightened my grip on the door, my knuckles turning white, and held the line. She bumped into me. It was not a violent shove, but an entitled one. The physical assumption that I would yield because I had always yielded. When I did not budge, she stumbled back a step, looking confused. "Move," she said, dropping the performance for a split second. "Let us in." I looked at her. I looked past her at the 12 people standing in my driveway. They were watching us like spectators at a car crash. The guy with the camera was still filming. Darius, the security officer, was standing a few yards back, his hand resting on his belt, his sunglasses reflecting the scene. I looked back at Tessa. I spoke clearly. I kept my voice low, forcing her to stop screaming if she wanted to hear me. "I did not invite you," I said. "I do not agree to this. Everyone needs to leave my house." Tessa gaped at me. The phone in her hand wobbled. She looked at the lens, checking to make sure it was recording, and then looked back at me with an expression of exaggerated disbelief. "What are you talking about?" she shrieked. "You said sure. I called you 2 hours ago. You said sure." She turned the phone toward her friends, seeking validation. "You guys heard her, right? I told you she said it was fine." She whipped back to me, thrusting the phone closer, trying to catch me in a lie. "Say it. Tell them you said sure. You are making me look like a liar." I looked right into the lens. I did not blink. "I said sure," I admitted. My voice was flat, devoid of the emotional trembling she was hoping for. Tessa let out a triumphant laugh. "See? She admits it. She is just being a psycho." "I said sure," I continued, cutting through her laughter, "because I knew that if I said no over the phone, you would come anyway. You would have come here and banged on this door until the neighbors called the police, and you would have made a scene about how difficult I am." I paused. I let the words hang in the hot air. "I said sure so you would drive 2 hours. I said sure so you would unpack your bags. I said sure so you would walk up to this door and hear the word no from a person you cannot bully and a system you cannot manipulate." Tessa froze. The triumph on her face curdled into something ugly. She realized, for the first time, that the trap wasn't the locked door. The trap was the journey. "You are sick," she whispered. "You are actually sick." Then she remembered the camera. She needed a pivot. She needed to be the victim. Her face crumpled. She squeezed her eyes shut for a second, forcing tears that weren't there, and when she opened them, she looked wounded. "I cannot believe you would do this to family," she wailed, her voice cracking perfectly. "We just wanted to celebrate you. We brought food. We brought gifts. I just wanted to see my baby sister's new home. And you are humiliating me? In front of my friends? In front of my crew?" She turned to the group on the driveway, extending a hand toward them. "Look at them. Riley, they are exhausted. We have nowhere to go. You are going to leave us on the street?" It was a good performance. I saw the girl in the matching t-shirt look at me with genuine disgust. I saw the guy with the cooler shake his head. Muttering something about me being a Karen, they were buying it. They saw a mean, cold-hearted sister turning away a loving, generous sibling. Darius stepped forward. His boots crunched on the gravel. He walked up the path until he was standing just behind Tessa. He did not look at her. He looked at me. "Ms. Hughes," he said. His voice was deep and official, cutting through Tessa's theatrics. "Do you want to authorize these individuals to enter the premises?" "No," I said. "Do you want to initiate a trespass directive for their removal?" Darius asked. I looked at Tessa. She was staring at me, daring me to do it. She didn't believe I would. She thought the social pressure, the cameras, the family card would stop me. "Yes," I said. Tessa gasped. It was a theatrical sound, designed for the microphone. You are arresting me? You are seriously going to arrest your own sister? I am not arresting you, I said calmly. I am protecting my home. From what? She screamed. From love? From family? From you, I said. She sneered. You are so selfish. You always have been. Mom was right. You get a little bit of money and you think you are better than everyone. We were going to help you. We were going to make this place look good. She pointed the camera at me again, getting a close-up. Everyone look at this. This is what jealousy looks like. She is jealous because I have a career and she sits behind a desk. She is jealous because I have friends. The group on the driveway was watching intently. They were on her side. I could feel the weight of their judgment. They thought I was a monster. I needed to break the narrative. I needed to show them exactly what kind of vacation they had signed up for. I looked past Tessa, locking eyes with the girl holding the makeup case. She looked tired. She was sweating in the heat. Did she tell you where I was going to sleep? I asked loudly. The girl blinked. She looked confused by the question. What? Tessa flinched. She tried to talk over me. Riley, shut up. Nobody cares. I raised my voice, just enough to carry over hers. Did she tell you that in this 4-bedroom house, she assigned herself the master suite? Did she tell you that she assigned the rest of you to double up in the guest rooms? The group was silent. They were listening now. And did she tell you, I continued, looking directly at the camera lens Tessa was holding, that she told me, the owner of the house, to sleep on the sofa? Tessa lowered the phone. That was a joke, she snapped. God, you have no sense of humor. It was not a joke, I said. You told me to buy expensive wine. You told me to buy fresh seafood. You told me to wash the towels and make sure they were white. You told me not to embarrass you. I looked at the friends. She did not bring you here for a vacation. She brought you here because she needed a set. She needed props. And she needed a servant. I pointed at the guy with the camera. You are not a guest. You are free labor. I pointed at the girl with the cooler. You are not a friend. You are background decoration. And me? I pointed to myself. I was supposed to be the maid who paid the mortgage. The atmosphere on the driveway shifted instantly. It was a physical change, like the air pressure dropping before a storm. The righteous indignation that Tessa had whipped up evaporated, replaced by a cold, dawning realization. The friends looked at each other. They looked at the heavy equipment they had been dragging. They looked at Tessa, who was suddenly very busy trying to fix the settings on her phone, refusing to meet anyone's eye. They remembered the ride over. They likely remembered Tessa barking orders about camera angles and lighting setups. They remembered her complaining about the venue falling through. They realized that the fun beach trip was actually an unpaid work trip where the accommodation was being stolen, not gifted. Tessa, the girl with the ring light said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. You said she invited us. You said she begged us to come. She did, Tessa lied, but her voice was shrill. She is lying now to make me look bad. She is mentally unstable. Mom told you she has issues. She just showed us the security guard, the guy with the backward hat said. He sounded disgusted. She filed a police report before we even got here. That doesn't look like she begged us to come. It looks like she knew you, the tall cameraman said. He started dismantling his rig. He clicked the lens off the body of the camera and capped it. It was a sound of finality. Tessa looked around, panic rising in her chest. She was losing the room. She was losing the audience. Guys, come on, she pleaded. Are you really going to listen to her? She is literally the most selfish person I know. We can still have fun. We can go to a hotel. We can make it an adventure vlog. I'm not paying for a hotel, one of the girls said, grabbing the handle of her suitcase. You said this was all covered. It is covered, Tessa insisted. I will fix it. Riley, stop being a bitch and let us in. She turned back to me, her face contorted with rage. She lunged for the door handle. Darius moved. He did not run. He simply stepped into the space between Tessa and the door. He was a wall of white uniform and authority. He held up one hand, palm out. "Ma'am," he said. "Step back." "Don't touch me," Tessa screamed. "This is my family's house." "This is private property," Darius said. "And the owner has asked you to leave. You have been given a warning. The next step is a citation for criminal trespass." He pointed to the street. "Your vehicles are blocking the fire lane. The Homeowners Association has already logged the license plates. You have 3 minutes to vacate before the tow trucks are dispatched." Tow trucks. That was the magic word. These people loved their drama. But they loved their cars more. The group disintegrated. There was no solidarity. There was no all for one. There was just a scramble to save their own assets. "I'm out," the guy with the cooler said. He turned and started walking fast toward the black SUV. "Wait," Tessa yelled. "Wait, we have to get the shot of the sunset." "We are leaving." "Tessa," the girl with the makeup case said. She didn't look at Tessa. She looked at me. She gave a small, awkward nod, half apology, half acknowledgement. Then she turned and dragged her suitcase back down the driveway. I stood in the doorway. I watched them retreat. Tessa stood alone on the porch. Her camera was down at her side. Her friends were abandoning her. The security guard was looming over her. The door to the paradise she had promised was barred by the sisters she had spent a lifetime underestimating. She looked at me one last time. There was no sadness in her eyes. There was no regret. There was only a cold, hard calculation. She was not thinking about what she had done wrong. She was thinking about how she could edit the footage she had to make herself the hero. "You are going to regret this," she said. Her voice was steady now, stripped of the fake emotion. It was the voice of the bully who had been punched back for the first time. "You think you won? You just started a war." "I did not start it," I said. "I just bought the battlefield." I stepped back. I closed the door. I turned the deadbolt. Click. I engaged the footlock. Thud. I stood in the silence of the foyer. My hands were trembling now. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving behind a cold, shaky feeling in my knees. But it wasn't fear. It was the aftershock of exertion. It was the feeling of a muscle that had been used for the first time in 30 years. I walked to the living room window and looked out through the curtain. The driveway was clearing. The SUVs were reversing. I saw Tessa sitting in the passenger seat of the black Suburban. She was typing furiously on her phone. She was not done. I knew she was not done. The text messages would start soon. Then the calls from Mom. Then the guilt trips. But for now, the driveway was empty. The street was quiet. The sun was sparkling on the ocean. I was alone. And it was the most beautiful feeling in the world. I thought the silence was the end of it. I stood in my foyer, listening to the heavy quiet of the house. Believing that the click of the deadbolt had been the period at the end of the sentence, I was wrong. It was only a comma. Outside, the engines of the SUVs were idling, a low rumble that vibrated faintly through the floorboards. I moved back to the monitor on the wall, expecting to see taillights retreating down the driveway. Instead, I saw a tableau that made the blood in my veins turn to ice water. Tessa was not getting into the car. She was standing by the open trunk of the black Suburban, digging frantically through a leather satchel. Her friends were paused, hands on car door handles, looking at her with a mix of exhaustion and irritation. The security officer, Darius Cole, was writing something on a ticket pad, clearly preparing to issue the citation he had promised. Then, Tessa straightened up. In her hand, she held a document. It was a single sheet of bright, white paper, crisp and unwrinkled. It looked glaringly new against the backdrop of the dusty car and the humid afternoon. She marched back toward the house. She did not look at the camera. She looked at Darius. "Stop writing!" she screamed. Her voice was raw, scratching against the microphone of the doorbell system. "You are making a mistake. A massive legal mistake." Darius did not look up from his pad immediately. He finished writing a line, capped his pen, and then raised his head slowly. The only mistake happening here, ma'am, is that you are still on private property after being trespassed. It is not her property, Tessa yelled. She thrust the paper into the air, waving it like a flag. I have the proof right here. This house belongs to the Hughes Family Trust. My name is on the trust. My father's name is on the trust. Riley is just the signatory. She does not have the right to kick us out. I stared at the screen. My breath caught in my throat. A trust? There was no trust. I had bought this house with my own money. Money I had saved for 10 years. Money earned from stock options and grueling 80-hour work weeks that my family knew nothing about. I had signed the deed as an individual. Let me see that, Darius said. He extended a hand. Tessa pulled the paper back, clutching it to her chest. She held it the way a bad actor holds a gun in a low-budget movie, like a prop that gave her power. Rather than a piece of evidence, I do not have to give it to you. It is a legal document. You can look, but do not touch it. She held it up to his face, her fingers gripping the edges so tightly her knuckles were yellow. Read it, she demanded. Quitclaim deed, transferred to the Hughes Family Trust, dated yesterday. She signed it over. She probably forgot because she's on medication, but it is legal. My stomach dropped. Medication. That was the narrative they were planting. Riley is unstable. Riley forgets things. Riley needs a conservatorship. Darius leaned in. He adjusted his sunglasses. He was not intimidated by the paper. He was analyzing it. He squinted against the glare of the sun, reading the fine print that Tessa was brandishing. The group of friends had drifted closer again. The promise of a plot twist was too tempting to resist. The cameraman had uncapped his lens. He wasn't filming openly, shooting from the hip, but the red record light was blinking. Hold it steady, Darius said. His voice was flat, professional. Tessa smirked. She thought she had won. She thought the uniform would bow to the paperwork. See? It says right there. Grantor. Riley Hughes. Grantee. Hughes Family Trust. We are the trustees. We have right of access. Darius looked at the paper for another 10 seconds. Then he stepped back. He took a slow breath and looked at Tessa with an expression that was no longer just annoyed. It was something sharper. It was the look of a predator who realizes the prey has just limped into the open. Ma'am, Darius said, who prepared this document? Our family attorney, Tessa lied instantly. Top firm, very expensive. And it was notarized? Obviously, she scoffed. Look at the stamp at the bottom. Darius nodded. He tapped his clipboard with his pen. I am looking at it, and that is why I am calling the police. Tessa's smirk vanished. What? This document is fraudulent, Darius stated. He did not say it as a question. He said it as a fact, as undeniable as gravity. You are lying, Tessa shrieked. You are just a security guard. You do not know real estate law. I spent 20 years in the sheriff's department serving eviction notices and processing property liens, Darius said calmly. I know what a deed looks like. He pointed a gloved finger at the paper she was still clutching. First of all, he said, his voice projecting clearly so that every single one of her friends could hear. The assessor's parcel number, or APN. You have it listed there as a 12-digit sequence, starting with 042. Tessa blinked. She looked down at the paper. In this county, Darius continued, coastal parcel numbers start with 800. The number on that paper corresponds to a zoning district about 40 miles inland. Looks like someone copied it from an old tax bill for a different property and didn't check the map. The silence on the driveway was absolute. Even the seagulls seemed to stop screaming to listen. Second, Darius said, driving the nail in deeper. The notary seal, it says, State of Florida, County of Orange. That is an inland county. You are telling me your sister drove 3 hours to Orlando yesterday, signed a deed, and drove back, all while closing on the house here at the coast? She might have, Tessa stammered. Her voice had jumped an octave. She travels a lot. And third, Darius finished, The date stamp on the electronic recording line at the top right, it is formatted day, month, year. The county clerk's office here uses month, day, year, always. That was generated by a computer template, not a government server. He looked at her over the top of his glasses. That is a forged instrument, ma'am. Attempting to use a forged document to gain access to a property is a felony. It is called uttering a forged instrument. And since you are claiming ownership to gain entry, it is also attempted burglary. The word burglary hung in the hot air like a thunderclap. Behind Tessa, the group of friends began to physically recoil. This was no longer a misunderstanding. This was not family drama. This was a crime scene. "Wait," the girl with the makeup case whispered. She looked at the paper in Tessa's hand as if it were radioactive. "Tessa, is that fake? Did you print that?" "No," Tessa yelled, pulling the paper against her chest. "It is a typo. It is just a clerical error. The lawyer made a mistake with the numbers." "A typo?" the cameraman asked. His voice was heavy with disbelief. "You said you had paperwork. You said it was airtight. You just showed him a fake deed?" "It is not fake," Tessa insisted. But she was backing away now. She was backing toward the car. "I am going to call my dad. He will explain it. He handled the filing." "You can call him," Darius said, unclipping the radio from his shoulder. "But you are going to wait right here." He pressed the button on his radio. "Dispatch. This is Unit 1 at Driftglass Lane, requesting county assistance. I have a subject attempting to gain entry with fraudulent documentation. Potential fraud in progress. Send a unit." Fraud in progress. I watched from the safety of my hallway, my hand covering my mouth. I had expected them to scream. I had expected them to pound on the door. I had not expected this. My father. My father had made a fake deed. He hadn't just sent Tessa to bully me. He had armed her with a forgery. They weren't just trying to crash my vacation. They were trying to steal the title to my home. I felt a wave of nausea, followed immediately by a cold, hard rage. They thought I was so stupid. They thought I was so passive that I would see a piece of paper and just fold. They thought I wouldn't check the numbers. They thought I wouldn't know the difference between a county seal and a template they downloaded off the internet. Outside, the atmosphere had shifted from tense to terrified. The friends were panicking. "I am leaving," the guy with the cooler said. He didn't walk to the car. He walked to the street. "I am walking to the Uber pickup spot outside the gate. I am not being part of this." "Me too," another girl said. She abandoned her suitcase on the driveway and started walking fast. "Guys, stop!" Tessa screamed at them. "You are overreacting. It is just a mix-up." "Tessa, he called the cops," the cameraman said. He was packing his gear with frantic speed. "You showed him a fake deed. That is not a mix-up. That is jail." "It is not jail!" Tessa yelled. She looked around, wild-eyed. She looked at the house. She looked at the camera lens on the wall. Riley, tell them Dad sent the papers." I did not answer. I did not open the door. I let her scream at the wood and the stucco. It took less than 8 minutes for the police to arrive. It was not a dramatic siren-wailing arrival. It was 2 sheriff's department cruisers rolling silently up the street, their blue lights flashing efficiently in the daylight. They parked at angles, blocking the driveway, boxing the black Suburban in. 2 deputies stepped out. They were uniformed, heavy with gear belts, their faces impassive. They walked over to Darius, who was standing like a sentinel by the front bumper of the Suburban. Darius spoke to them. He pointed at Tessa. He pointed at the paper she was still trying to shove into her purse. He pointed at the house. One of the deputies nodded. He walked over to Tessa. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the vehicle," the deputy said. "I didn't do anything," Tessa cried. "This is a civil matter. It is my sister's house." "Step away from the vehicle," the deputy repeated. He did not raise his voice. He didn't have to. The second deputy walked toward my front door. He walked up the path, stepping over the abandoned luggage. He rang the doorbell. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment I had to step out of the fortress and onto the record. I opened the door. The deputy looked at me. He was young, but his eyes were tired. "Ma'am, are you the homeowner? Riley Hughes?" "Yes," I said. "Here is my identification." I handed him my driver's license and the folded top page of my closing disclosure form, which I had grabbed from the kitchen counter. He glanced at them, verified the name, and handed them back. "Okay, Ms. Hughes," he said. He took a notebook out of his pocket. "We have a group of individuals out here claiming they have right of access to this property. One of them is presenting a document claiming transfer of ownership to a family trust. Did you sign any such document?" "No," I said clearly. "I closed on this house at 10 o'clock this morning. I have signed nothing since then except a receipt for lunch." The deputy nodded. He wrote that down. "Do you know these people?" "The woman in the white dress is my sister, Tessa Hughes," I said. "I do not know the others." "Did you invite them here?" "No." "Did you give them permission to be on the property?" "No." "Did you give them permission to film on the property?" "No." "Okay," the deputy said. He looked back at the driveway. Tessa was currently arguing with the other officer, her hands flying in the air. The friends were huddled by the street, looking like they wanted to dissolve into the pavement. "Ms. Hughes?" the deputy asked. "Do you want them removed?" "Yes," I said. "And regarding the document," the deputy said, lowering his voice slightly, "Security Officer Cole states that it appears to be a forgery. If they attempt to use it to assert ownership, that is a criminal offense. Do you wish to pursue that? Or do you just want them gone?" I looked past him. I looked at Tessa. She had stopped screaming. She was looking at me. Her face was a mask of fear and fury. She held up her phone, instinctively trying to record me, trying to intimidate me one last time. But the camera wasn't a weapon anymore. It was just a witness. If I let them go, they would come back. They would refine the forgery. They would claim I was crazy. They would say I verbally agreed and then changed my mind. They would spin this into a story about how I called the cops on my own family for no reason. I needed the record. I needed the line in the sand to be made of concrete. "I want to file a report," I said. "If she has a fake deed, I want it logged into evidence." The deputy nodded. "Understood." He turned back to the driveway. He walked over to Tessa. I could not hear exactly what he said, but I saw the result. He held out his hand. Tessa froze. She looked at the paper in her hand. She looked at the deputy. She looked at her camera. Then, slowly, shaking, she handed the paper to the officer. He took it. He did not read it. He folded it once and placed it into an evidence bag he pulled from his cargo pocket. Tessa's face went white. She realized, finally, that she had lost control of the scene. The prop was gone. The script was gone. "You are kidding me!" she screamed at me across the lawn. "You are letting them take the deed? Dad is going to kill you. Riley, he is going to kill you." "Ma'am, stop shouting," the deputy ordered. "You are being issued a trespass warning. If you return to this property, you will be arrested. Your friends need to leave immediately. You need to leave immediately." "My car!" Tessa yelled. "My friends left their bags." "Grab your bags," the deputy said to the group. "Load them up. You have 2 minutes." It was a scramble. It was pathetic. The influencers who had arrived like royalty were now stuffing suitcases into trunks with the desperate haste of refugees. The ring light was thrown into a back seat, uncollapsed. The cooler was shoved in sideways. Tessa stood by the driver's door of the Suburban. She was not helping. She was glaring at me. She raised her phone one last time. She didn't say anything. She just pointed the lens at me. Then at the police. Then at the house. I knew what she was doing. She was trying to find the angle. She was trying to figure out how to cut this footage to make herself the martyr. Police brutality, crazy sister, stolen inheritance. But she didn't know that I had my own folder on my laptop. She didn't know that the security guard had already noted the APN error. She didn't know that the metadata on her typo would eventually trace back to a computer that wasn't mine. She got into the car. She slammed the door so hard the vehicle shook. The deputy tapped the roof of the Suburban. "Go! Now!" the engine roared. Tessa reversed blindly, almost hitting the white convertible behind her. She threw the car into drive and peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching on the asphalt, leaving a black mark on the pristine road of sea glass dunes. The other cars followed, a procession of defeat. The deputy walked back to me. "We have the document, Ms. Hughes. We will file the report. You will get a case number. I suggest you contact a lawyer regarding the title fraud." "I will," I said. "Thank you." "Lock your doors," he said kindly. "Family disputes can get messy." "I know," I said. He walked back to his cruiser. Darius gave me a sharp nod from the driveway, then got into his security vehicle to follow the convoy out of the community, ensuring they actually left. I closed the door. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. My legs felt like jelly. I slid down until I was sitting on the floor of the foyer. My knees pulled up to my chest. It was over. But then, my phone buzzed. I looked at it. It was a text from my mother. "Tessa just called me. She is crying. She said you set her up. She said you humiliated the family." The text bubble pulsed. A second message appeared. "Do you think you won? You didn't win anything. You just started a war. And we have the paperwork to end it." I stared at the screen. They weren't stopping. They were doubling down. The fake deed wasn't a one-time prop. It was the opening salvo of a siege. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen. I opened my laptop. I created a new subfolder inside Evidence. I named it The Parents. I was not done. I was just getting started. And if they wanted to talk about paperwork, I was about to introduce them to the full weight of the American legal system. The departure was not a cinematic exit. There was no slow-motion fade to black, no dramatic musical score to underscore the tragedy of a ruined vacation. It was just messy, loud, and deeply embarrassing. I stood in the shadow of my own front door, watching the disintegration of Tessa's entourage. The sheriff's deputy stood by his cruiser, arms crossed, a silent sentinel ensuring that the vacate order was executed with speed. The frantic energy that had fueled their arrival, the belief that they were the main characters in a fun coastal adventure, had completely evaporated. Now, they were just tired people shoving expensive luggage into the trunks of cars that were blocking traffic. I saw the cameraman, the tall one who had been so eager to film my humiliation earlier. He caught my eye as he slammed the hatch of the equipment SUV. He didn't sneer. He didn't scowl. He looked down at the pavement, his face flushed with a color that looked a lot like shame. He muttered something to the girl next to him, shaking his head, and I read his lips. I told her this was a bad idea. One of the girls in the matching t-shirts, the one who had abandoned her suitcase on the driveway moments before, looked back at me before getting into the back seat of the convertible. She raised a hand, a small, tentative wave. It wasn't friendly. Exactly. It was an apology. It was an acknowledgement that the script Tessa had sold them was a lie, and that I was not the villain of this story. I did not wave back. I just watched. Tessa was the last to get in. She sat in the driver's seat of the black Suburban. The window rolled up tight. She refused to look at the house. She refused to look at me. She was typing furiously on her phone, her thumbs moving as if she were trying to rewrite reality before the car even moved. The engines roared to life. The convoy reversed, corrected, and then drove away, leaving tire marks on the pristine asphalt of Driftglass Lane. The silence that rushed back in to fill the space was heavy. It was the silence of a battlefield after the cannons stopped firing. The deputy walked up the path to where I was standing. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small white card. "Here is the case number," he said, handing it to me. 0492-Bravo. I took the card. It felt flimsy in my hand, just a piece of cardstock, but I knew it was a shield. "If they come back," the deputy said, his voice low and serious, You do not open the door, you do not engage, you call dispatch, and you read this number. We will treat it as a violation of a trespass warning. That means immediate arrest, no warnings, no conversations. Thank you, I said. My voice sounded hoarse. I appreciate you coming out so quickly. It is what we do, he said. He tipped the brim of his hat slightly. Try to have a better afternoon, Ms. Hughes. He walked back to his car. Darius Cole, the security supervisor, remained. He walked up the driveway, scanning the ground where the cars had been parked, checking for damage to the pavers. He found a crushed dune plant and frowned, making a note on his clipboard. I am going to have the night patrol do a double loop past your property tonight, Darius said without looking up. Every 30 minutes, just to be safe. Do you think they will come back? I asked. Darius looked at me then. He took off his sunglasses. His eyes were kind, but tired. Not tonight. They are scared. They saw the badge. But people like that, people who think the rules are just suggestions, they usually try to find a way around the wall if they cannot climb over it. We will be watching. He tapped his pen against the clipboard. I am logging this incident in the community file as an attempted occupancy violation and filming harassment. If your sister tries to call the gate and claims she is a guest, the system will flag her immediately. She is blacklisted from Seaglass Dunes until further notice. Thank you, Darius, I said. Really? You did good, he said. Most people cave. Most people open the door just to stop the noise. You held the line. He nodded once, put his sunglasses back on, and walked back to his white security vehicle. I watched him drive away. I was alone. I turned and walked back into the house. I locked the deadbolt. I engaged the footlock. I checked the windows. The house was secure. The air conditioning was humming. The ocean was blue and beautiful through the glass. I leaned back against the door and closed my eyes, finally letting out the breath I felt like I had been holding for 2 hours. My hands were shaking. The adrenaline crash was hitting me hard, making my knees feel like water. I needed water. I needed to sit down. Then, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was a single, short vibration, a text message. I opened my eyes. I looked at the screen. It was from Tessa. I expected a long, ranting paragraph. I expected insults. I expected her to blame me for ruining her brand deals or embarrassing her in front of her crew. But it was not a rant. It was 2 sentences. Wait, Mom and Dad already filed. The words hit me harder than any scream could have. Filed. My blood ran cold. If she had said, Mom and Dad are mad, I would have rolled my eyes. If she had said, Dad is cutting you out of the will, I would have laughed. I didn't care about their money, but filed was different. Filed was a specific, procedural verb. My family was not good at affection. They were not good at listening, but they were masters of bureaucracy. My father made his money in commercial real estate. He knew how to bury people in paperwork. He knew that the truth didn't matter as much as what was recorded in the county ledger. He knew that possession was 9/10 of the law, but the other 1/10 was the piece of paper stamped by a clerk. I looked at the text again. Wait, Mom and Dad already filed? Filed what? The fake deed Tessa had shown the police? The one with the wrong parcel number and the inland notary stamp? Or something else? A terrible thought bloomed in my mind. Tessa had arrived at 2 o'clock. She had waved a piece of paper that Darius said was a clumsy forgery. But what if that paper was just a decoy? What if that was just the copy Tessa had printed out at home? What if the real move, the actual legal strike, had happened while I was distracted by the circus in my driveway? I felt a wave of nausea. I did not reply to the text. I did not call her. That was what they wanted. They wanted me to call in a panic, asking what they had done, so they could gaslight me into submission. Instead, I took a screenshot. I captured the message, the time, and the sender. I opened my laptop, which was still sitting on the kitchen island. I dragged the image into the folder labeled Seaglass/evidence. I saved it twice. I did not unpack. I did not open the bottle of wine I had bought for myself. I walked through the beautiful empty house that I had fought so hard to buy, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a sanctuary. It felt like a crime scene that hadn't been processed yet. I spent the night sitting on the white sofa, staring at the dark ocean. I had the security app open on my iPad, watching the cameras. Every time a car drove down the street, I tensed up. But no one came. Darius kept his word. The white patrol car glided past every 30 minutes, a silent guardian in the night. But Darius could not protect me from what was happening in a server room somewhere in the county administration building. I did not sleep. At 7 o'clock the next morning, I showered. I dressed in a dark blazer and trousers. I did not dress for the beach. I dressed for war. I gathered my closing documents, the thick stack of papers I had signed only yesterday. I put them in a leather satchel. I added the case number card the deputy had given me. I drove out of Seaglass Dunes at 8 o'clock. The morning sun was bright and cheerful, glinting off the dew on the manicured lawns. It felt mocking. I drove 30 minutes north to the Bayshore Records office. It was a squat, beige government building that smelled of floor wax and old coffee. It was the place where dreams were reduced to file numbers and property lines were drawn in permanent ink. This was where the truth lived, not the emotional truth, but the legal truth. I walked through the metal detector. I took a ticket from the machine, number 42. I sat in a hard plastic chair and waited. My leg bounced nervously. I watched the digital board. Now serving number 38, I clutched my bag. I told myself I was being paranoid. The deed Tessa had was fake. Darius had proved it. The parcel number was wrong. The notary was wrong. There was no way my father, a seasoned businessman, would be stupid enough to file a document that was visibly fraudulent. Unless he didn't care if it was fraudulent, unless he just needed it to be recorded to create a cloud on the title. A cloud on the title meant I couldn't sell. I couldn't refinance. And if they sued, a judge might freeze the property until it was resolved. They didn't need to win. They just needed to lock me in litigation until I ran out of money. Number 42, the automated voice called out. I stood up. I walked to window 3. The clerk was a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain and a weary expression. Her name tag said Patricia. "Help you?" she asked, not looking up from her computer. "Hi," I said. My voice was steady, but my palms were sweating. "My name is Riley Hughes. I closed on a property yesterday, Driftglass Lane, parcel number 800-411-62. I recited the number from memory. I had memorized it the night before. Patricia typed it in. Clack, clack, clack. "Okay," she said. "I see the transfer from the developer to Riley Hughes. Recorded yesterday at 10:14 in the morning." I let out a small breath. "Yes, that is me." "So what do you need?" she asked. "A certified copy?" "I need to check if there has been any activity since then," I said. "I need to know if any other documents have been submitted or recorded against this parcel in the last 24 hours. Patricia sighed. She adjusted her glasses. "Honey, the system updates overnight. If it was dropped off yesterday afternoon, it might be in the queue." "Can you check the pending queue?" I asked. "Please, it is urgent. There was a legal dispute at the property yesterday involving police." The word police made her look up. She saw the blazer. She saw the tension in my jaw. She saw that I was not a confused tourist. "All right," she said. "Let me check the intake log." She typed again. This time, it took longer. She stared at the screen. She frowned. She tapped a key, scrolled down, and tapped another key. The silence stretched. It was only 10 seconds, but it felt like 10 years. I watched her eyes move back and forth across the monitor. Then, she stopped moving. She looked at me. The boredom was gone from her face, replaced by a cautious, bureaucratic suspicion. "Ms. Hughes," she said slowly, "you are the sole owner listed on the deed from yesterday morning, correct?" "Yes," I said. "And you are standing here right now?" She said, "Yes." "Did you authorize a recording on this property yesterday afternoon?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. as if she didn't want the other clerks to hear. Around 2:30? My heart stopped. 2:30? That was exactly when Tessa had been standing in my driveway. That was exactly when she had screamed that I was making a mistake. That was exactly when she had texted, "Wait." They hadn't just sent Tessa to scare me. They had coordinated a strike. While Tessa was distracting me with the camera and the screaming, someone else, my father, had been submitting paperwork. "What was recorded?" I asked. My voice was ice. "Answer my question first," Patricia said, her hand hovering over her mouse. "Did you authorize it?" I looked her in the eye. I did not blink. I did not hesitate. "No," I said. Patricia nodded. She clicked her mouse once. "Well," she said grimly, "then we have a problem, because there is a quitclaim deed in the batch. Pending review. It transfers 50% interest in the property to something called the Hughes Family Trust." She turned the monitor slightly so I could see. There it was, a digital scan of a document. It wasn't the clumsy fake Tessa had held. This one looked real. It had the correct parcel number. It had a signature that looked terrifyingly like mine. "The submitter listed," Patricia said, reading from the metadata, "is not you. It came in through an e-recording vendor." "Who?" I asked. "It says the submitter is Frank Hughes," she said. "My father. He had filed it. He had actually done it. He had forged my signature, created a fake transfer, and uploaded it to the county database while I was busy fighting off his daughter." "He does not have my permission," I said. "That signature is a forgery." Patricia looked at me. She looked at the screen. She saw the storm coming. "Then you need to speak to the fraud department," she said. "Because as of right now, according to this pile, your father is trying to steal half your house." I looked at the screen one last time. Wait, Mom and Dad already filed. They thought they had checkmated me. They thought that by getting the paper into the system, they had won. They thought I would crumble. I reached into my bag and pulled out the case number card. "I don't just want to speak to the fraud department," I said. "I want to lock this file down so tight that he cannot even see it." I looked at Patricia. "Tell me exactly what I need to do to stop a crime in progress." Patricia turned the monitor fully toward me. The screen was bright, humming with the static of officialdom. On it was a digital scan of a document that looked terrifyingly legitimate. It was titled "Quitclaim Deed," and at a glance, it was perfect. The margins were correct. The legal description of the property, the metes and bounds, the lot number, was accurate. It wasn't the clumsy inland tax code disaster Tessa had waved in my driveway. This was the real weapon. "Grantor, Riley Hughes," Patricia read aloud, her voice devoid of emotion. "Grantee, the Hughes Family Revocable Trust." I leaned in, my hands gripping the cold edge of the counter. I stared at the bottom of the page. There was a signature. It spelled my name. It had the right loops, the right slant to the right. To a stranger, to a bank teller, or to a county clerk, it would pass. But I was not a stranger. I was the owner of that name, and I knew how my hand moved when I held a pen. "That is not me," I said. I pointed to the capital R. "Look at the top of the letter. When I sign, I loop the top. This one is sharp. It is a point." I moved my finger to the end of the signature. "And the trail," I lift the pen. "This person dragged it. See the ink pooling at the end of the line? That is hesitation. That is someone trying to copy a picture, not someone writing their own name." Patricia adjusted her glasses. She squinted at the pixels. "It is a close match. Ms. Hughes, if this went through, it would be binding until a judge said otherwise." "But it hasn't gone through," I said. "You said it is pending." "It is in the intake queue," Patricia confirmed. "It was submitted electronically. The system does an automated check for formatting, and then a clerk reviews it. That is the stage we are in now." "Stop it," I said. "I want to file a formal objection. I want to flag it as fraudulent right now." Patricia looked at me. She saw the desperation, but she also saw the determination. She nodded. "I can place an administrative hold on the parcel," she said. It is called a fraud alert. It means nothing gets recorded on this title without a photo ID verification in person. It locks the digital door. Do it, I said. She typed. The keystrokes sounded like gunshots in the quiet office. Okay, the hold is active. This document is rejected. I am marking it as identity verification failed. It will bounce back to the submitter. Who is the submitter? I asked. Patricia clicked a tab labeled Metadata. It was submitted through a third-party e-recording service, eDocs Direct. I need the user profile, I said. I need to know who logged into that service. I cannot give you their password or login, Patricia said. But I can give you the transmission receipt. It lists the account holder's name and the contact email for notifications. Print it, I said. The printer behind her whirred to life. A single sheet of paper slid out. Patricia handed it to me. I held it up. I scanned the lines of data. Submitter name, Frank Hughes. I knew it. I had known it the moment Tessa sent the text. But seeing it in black and white was different. My father? The man who had taught me how to ride a bike, who had sat at the head of the dinner table, had sat at a computer and committed a felony against his own daughter. I looked at the timestamp. Transmission time. 12:14 p.m. I closed my eyes. 12:14. That was exactly 15 minutes after Tessa had called me. I'm coming. 2 hours. They had timed it. They had coordinated it perfectly. Tessa calls to announce the invasion. Frank logs in to steal the title. The plan was for the deed to record by 2 o'clock. By the time Tessa arrived, the house wouldn't legally be mine anymore. She wouldn't be trespassing. She would be a trustee entering family property. But they had missed the cutoff. They didn't know the county queue was backed up. They didn't know I would have a security guard who actually read the bylaws. I looked back down at the paper. My eyes drifted to the next line. Notification email. This was where the receipt usually listed a law firm or a personal Gmail account. I expected to see my father's old AOL address or his business email. I saw neither. Contact. Finance? Unroom Studios.co. I froze. Sunroom Studios. That wasn't my father's company. That was Tessa's. That was the LLC she used for her influencer business. That was the entity that managed her brand deals, her YouTube ad revenue, and her production expenses. The email address wasn't just a contact. It was a smoking gun. My father hadn't just acted as an overbearing parent trying to control family assets. He had used Tessa's corporate account to pay the recording fees. He had used her business infrastructure to facilitate the fraud. The realization hit me like a physical blow to the chest. The 12 people in the driveway, the cameras, the lighting rigs. I had thought they were just there to party. I had thought Tessa was just being a brat who wanted a free vacation venue. I was wrong. It was darker than that. They didn't bring cameras to film a beach trip. They brought cameras to film the confrontation. They thought the deed would be recorded. They thought they would arrive. I would try to stop them, and they would produce the real paperwork showing the house belonged to the trust. They wanted to film my reaction. They wanted the footage of entitled sister gets owned by family. They wanted to monetize my humiliation. The entire invasion was a content strategy. The legal fraud was just a production expense, billed to Sunroom Studios. Ms. Hughes? Patricia asked. Are you all right? I looked up. I felt cold, but my mind was crystal clear. No, I said. I am not all right, but I am finished being a victim. I folded the receipt and put it in my bag, right next to the police case number. Thank you, Patricia, I said. You just saved my house. I walked out of the records office. The sun was blinding. I put on my sunglasses and walked to my car, but I did not get in. I stood in the parking lot, leaning against the warm metal of the door. I needed armor, real armor. I took out my phone. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call Tessa. I dialed the number on the back of the glossy brochure I had received at closing yesterday. Fidelity National Title Insurance, Claims Department. It rang 3 times. Claims, this is Jason, a voice said. This is Riley Hughes, I said. I closed on a property yesterday. Policy number 449 2, 1, I need to open an emergency claim regarding title fraud and forgery. There was a pause. The tone on the other end shifted instantly from customer service to crisis management. Can you describe the incident, Ms. Hughes? My father and sister attempted to record a forged quitclaim deed transferring my property to a trust, I said. I have the receipt from the county records office showing the attempt. I have a police case number regarding their attempt to gain entry based on fraudulent documents, and I have the metadata showing the forgery was funded by a commercial entity. Okay, Jason said. I am escalating this to a senior counsel immediately. Do not talk to them. Do not sign anything. Do not answer their emails. We are going to lock the title down. I already placed a fraud alert at the county, I said. Good, Jason said. Smart. We will handle the legal filings from here. We will defend the title. That is what you pay us for. I hung up. That was the shield. Now I needed the sword. I scrolled through my contacts. I didn't have many lawyers in my phone. I was a data security analyst. I dealt with code, not courtrooms. But when I was buying the house, my realtor had recommended a lawyer to review the contract. I hadn't used her. I thought it was too expensive. But I had saved her number. Sloan Mercer, Real Estate Litigation. I remembered her website. It was stark, black and white, with a tagline that said, "We don't mediate, we win." I pressed call. Mercer Law, a receptionist answered. This is Riley Hughes, I said. I have a title fraud case involving immediate family, a commercial entity, and an active police report. I am currently standing in the parking lot of the county records office with evidence of a forged deed. I need to speak to Sloan Mercer. One moment. The hold music was classical, sharp violins. It played for less than 30 seconds. This is Sloan. Her voice was low, raspy, and sounded like it had been cured in scotch and cynicism. Ms. Mercer, I said. My name is Riley. I think my family is trying to steal my house. Do they have a key? Sloan asked. No pleasantries? No, how are you? Just the tactical question. No, I said. I changed the codes. Did they file the deed? They tried, I said. I stopped it. I have the receipt. It was submitted by my father, paid for by my sister's company. Corporate funds used for personal fraud, Sloan said. I could hear a lighter click in the background. That is interesting. That pierces the corporate veil. We can go after the business assets. I don't care about the assets, I said. I just want them to stop. They sent 12 people to my house yesterday. They are filming everything. They are trying to create a constructive eviction, Sloan said. Make you miserable so you leave, or trick you into signing something to make it stop. Where are you right now? I am at the records office. Where is the house? Seaglass Dunes. Okay, Sloan said. I am going to draft a cease and desist, but that is just a piece of paper. We need an injunction. I can get a judge to look at this by this afternoon if we file an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order. Do it, I said. I need a retainer, she said. 5,000, sent by wire. Today. I will send it in 10 minutes, I said. Good, Sloan said. Now, listen to me. Riley, this is important. I'm listening. You stop the recording, which means they are going to be desperate, she said. They thought they had you. Now they know you are fighting back. Desperate people do stupid, dangerous things. I have security, I said. The community has a patrol. Patrols are for noise complaints, Sloan said. This is a felony fraud case. Do not go back to that house alone. Do not open the door for anyone who isn't a uniformed officer. And if you see your father, do not speak to him. If he says hello, you record him. I understand, I said. Get the wire sent, Sloan said. I will start the war. She hung up. I lowered the phone. My hand was trembling again, but not from fear. It was the vibration of a machine turning on. I got into my car. I opened my banking app. I transferred $5,000 to the account Sloan's receptionist had texted me. It was a lot of money. It was my furniture budget. It was my fun money. But fun was over. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 9:30 in the morning. I had the evidence. I had the insurance. I had the lawyer. And I had one more stop to make. I started the car and drove out of the parking lot. I wasn't going back to the beach. I was going to the one place my family never thought I would go. I was going to the source of the money. If Sunroom Studios was funding this war, then Sunroom Studios was a valid target, and I knew exactly where Tessa kept her servers. Sloan Mercer's office was not designed for comfort. It was designed for efficiency. There were no plush leather armchairs, no calming abstract art, and absolutely no bowls of mints. The walls were lined with gray filing cabinets, and her desk was a vast expanse of glass that looked less like furniture and more like an operating table. I sat across from her. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. I had wired the $5,000 sitting in my car, and by the time I walked up the 3 flights of stairs, Sloan's paralegal had already opened a file with my name on it. "First things first," Sloan said, not looking up from her laptop. She was typing with a speed that sounded like hail hitting a tin roof. "We are locking the digital doors before we lock the legal ones. You said you are a data analyst?" "Yes," I said. "Good. Then you know the drill. While I draft this motion, I want you to scrub your digital footprint. If they have your passwords, change them. If they have your security questions, change them. If your mother knows the name of your first pet or the street you grew up on, those questions are compromised." I pulled out my phone. I didn't just change my passwords. I scorched the earth. I started with my email. I changed the password to a random string of 20 characters. I enabled hardware key 2-factor authentication. I went into the authorized devices list. I saw a device logged in from Frank's iPad. My stomach tightened. My father had been reading my emails. He had likely seen the closing disclosure. He knew exactly how much I paid and which title company I used. I clicked Revoke Access. I moved to my bank accounts. Revoke. I moved to the Smart Home Hub for the beach house. I saw a guest user pending invitation sent to Tessa's email. I hadn't sent that. She must have tried to request access, or Frank had tried to add her before I wiped his access. Delete. Done, I said, putting the phone down. They are locked out of everything. Bank, email, house, cloud storage. Excellent, Sloan said. She hit a final key and spun her monitor around. Now, let's talk about the real weapon. We are not just suing them, we are burying them. She pointed to the document on the screen. This is an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction, she explained, her voice clipping through the legal terms like she was ordering lunch. We are filing this in the civil division, concurrent with your quiet title action. I read the text. It was beautiful. It was cold, hard, and devoid of emotion. Petitioner, Riley Hughes. Respondents, Frank Hughes, Diane Hughes, Tessa Hughes, and Sunroom Studios, LLC. We are naming the company? I asked. Absolutely, Sloan said, a shark-like grin appearing for a fraction of a second. You have proof they used corporate resources to facilitate the fraud. That makes the LLC a party to the action. It also means if Tessa violates the order, her business assets are at risk. That is the only thing influencers care about, their revenue stream. Sloan picked up her phone. She dialed a number on speaker. This is Sloan. I have the counsel for Fidelity National Title on the line. David, are you there? I am here, a male voice answered. It was Jason's boss from the title insurance company. We have reviewed the evidence Ms. Hughes submitted. The metadata on the e-recording attempt is damning. We are filing a lis pendens immediately to cloud the title in our favor, effectively blocking any further attempts by the father to record. We are also preparing a criminal referral packet for the district attorney regarding the forgery. Great, Sloan said. I am heading to the courthouse in 20 minutes to get the TRO signed. I want the judge to see that the title company is already moving. It adds weight. You will have our filing confirmation by noon, David said. Sloan hung up. She looked at me. Do you see what is happening, Riley? We are fighting back, I said. No, Sloane corrected. We are not fighting. Fighting implies they have a chance. We are administering consequences. This is procedural. It is boring. It is paperwork. And it is going to ruin their day. She printed the documents. The stack was an inch thick. I need to send a litigation hold letter to the e-recording vendor, she said, signing the last page of the motion. The company your father used to upload the fake deed. We need to make sure they don't purge their server logs. I want the IP address, the MAC address of the computer used, and the credit card transaction details. Can we get that? I asked. With a subpoena? Yes, Sloane said. But the letter puts them on notice. If they delete it after receiving this, they go to jail too. It freezes the crime scene. She handed the stack of papers to her paralegal. A young man named Kevin who looked like he ran marathons. Kevin, get a runner. File this ex parte. Tell the clerk it is a title fraud emergency involving immediate family. I want a judge to look at this before lunch. Kevin nodded and vanished. Now, Sloane said, leaning back. We wait. It will take about 2 hours. Go get a coffee. Do not turn your phone on. Do not check your texts. You are a ghost until I tell you otherwise. I did not get coffee. I sat in my car in the parking garage and stared at the concrete wall. I felt a strange vibration in my chest. It was the feeling of the machinery of the state turning its gears in my direction. For 30 years, I had been the daughter who couldn't say no. Now, I was the plaintiff. At 1:45, my burner phone, which Sloane had insisted I buy, rang. We got it, Sloane said. The order? Signed and stamped, she said. The judge was not amused by the fake notary seal. You have a full temporary restraining order. They are ordered to stay 500 yards away from you and the property. They are enjoined from filing any documents regarding the title. They are prohibited from contacting you directly or through third parties. And Tessa is specifically prohibited from publishing any media recorded on the property. She can't post the video? I asked. If she posts one frame of that video, Sloane said, she is in contempt of court, and since we named her business, I can freeze her business accounts. What happens now? Now, Sloane said. We serve them. I have a process server already routed. The process server's name was Marcus. I never met him. But Sloane forwarded me his updates in real time. It felt like watching a tactical strike unfold via text message. Target 1, Tessa Hughes. Location, Sunroom Studios, downtown. I imagined the scene. Tessa would be in her creative space, surrounded by mood boards and ring lights, probably editing the footage of her screaming at my door, trying to spin it into a victim narrative. Update from Marcus. Subject located at 2:30 p.m. Subject attempted to evade service by locking herself in a glass-walled office. Service affected by placing documents on the door handle in plain view. Subject shouted that the documents were fake and harassment. Subject refused to sign. Refusal noted in affidavit. Service complete. I felt a grim satisfaction. Tessa calling a court order fake was the most Tessa thing possible. She thought she could opt out of the law like she opted out of a bad sponsorship deal. She didn't understand that the law didn't require her consent. It only required her location. Target 2, Diane Hughes. Location, Regional Medical Center, Admin Wing. My mother, she worked in hospital administration. She cared deeply about appearances. She cared about being the saintly mother who sacrificed everything. Update from Marcus. Subject served at 3:15 p.m. in the lobby. Subject attempted to walk away. When informed of the nature of the documents, restraining order, subject became visibly distressed. Subject asked if she could call her daughter. Server informed her he is not a party to the case. Service complete. I closed my eyes. I could see her face, the crumbling of the mask, the realization that her concerned mother act had just been answered with a legal sledgehammer. Target 3, Frank Hughes. Location, the family home. Update from Marcus. Subject served at 4 p.m. at residence. Subject answered the door. Upon receiving documents, Subject became aggressive. Subject threw the paperwork onto the porch. Subject stated, "Tell her she is cut off." Server informed subject that throwing the documents does not negate service. Dashcam footage of interaction secured. Service complete. "Tell her she is cut off." That was my father. No remorse. No, "I'm sorry I tried to steal your house." Just anger that his property, me, had malfunctioned. "They are served," Sloan said when I called her back. "The clock is ticking. They have 21 days to respond to the lawsuit, but the restraining order is active right now. If they show up at your house, they go to jail." "Thank you, Sloan," I said. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "Now you have to do the hard part." "What is that?" "You have to enforce it," she said. "Send a copy of the order to your community management. Make sure every security guard at that gate has a picture of your family and a copy of the judge's signature. A restraining order is only a piece of paper if no one calls the cops." I drove back to Seaglass Dunes as the sun was beginning to set. The sky was a bruising purple, beautiful and heavy. I stopped at the gatehouse. The guard on duty was new. A young guy I hadn't met. "ID, please," he said. I handed him my license. Then I handed him a thick envelope. "This is a certified copy of a court order," I said. "It bars these 3 individuals from entering Seaglass Dunes. I need this on file with the security supervisor immediately." The guard looked at the seal on the paper. He looked at the bold text. "Judicial order." He sat up straighter. "I will put this in the captain's box right now, Ms. Hughes, and I will flag the system." "Thank you," I said. I drove to my house. The driveway was empty. The tire marks from the black Suburban were still there, faint black scars on the pavement. I walked to the front door. I entered the code. The new code. The one only I knew. I walked into the kitchen. The silence was absolute. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. It was a voicemail. From my mother. She must have called immediately after the process server left her office. I did not listen to it. I knew what it would say. It would be a mix of weeping and accusations. "How could you do this to us? We are your family. We were just trying to protect the asset. Your father is sick with worry." It was bait. It was an attempt to drag me back into the emotional mud where they knew how to fight. I pressed save. Then I opened my laptop and dragged the audio file into the evidence folder. I didn't listen to the words. I just looked at the file size. 3 megabytes of guilt. I walked to the sliding glass doors and looked out at the ocean. The waves were crashing, indifferent to my family drama. I reached into my bag and pulled out my copy of the temporary restraining order. I placed it on the kitchen island. It wasn't a trophy. It wasn't a victory flag. It was a tool. It was a boundary line drawn in ink because bloodlines had failed. I poured myself a glass of water. I stood there, in the darkening house, and for the first time in 32 years, I didn't feel like a daughter. I felt like a homeowner. I had 3 weeks until the hearing. I had a lawyer who was ready to scorch the earth. I had a security system that was tracking every license plate. "Your move," I whispered to the empty room. But I knew their move. They wouldn't come back with guns. They wouldn't come back with cars. They would come back with lies, and I would be ready to record every single one of them. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. In movies, justice always happens in cavernous halls with mahogany balconies and echoing ceilings. Civil Courtroom 4 was fluorescent lit, smelled faintly of floor wax and stale coffee, and felt more like a corporate conference room than a theater of judgment. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Sloan. My hands were folded in my lap, gripping each other so tightly my knuckles were white. I was wearing the same dark blazer I had worn to the records office. I didn't want to look like a victim. I wanted to look like a solvent, rational homeowner. On the other side of the aisle, the performance had already begun. My family looked immaculate. My mother, Diane, was wearing a soft pastel cardigan and pearls, an outfit chosen specifically to signal harmless grandmother. She was clutching a tissue, dabbing at eyes that were currently dry. My father, Frank, wore his charcoal suit, the one he wore to close commercial deals. He sat with a rigid, dignified posture, radiating the energy of a man who was used to being the most important person in the room. And Tessa. Tessa had scrubbed her face clean of makeup. She wore a simple high-necked blouse and pulled her hair back in a modest ponytail. She didn't look like the CEO of Sunroom Studios. She looked like a concerned sister who had taken a day off from volunteering at a soup kitchen. They were staging a scene. They were selling a narrative. "All rise," the bailiff droned. Judge Vance entered. She was a woman in her 60s with sharp, intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense haircut. She sat down, adjusted her reading glasses, and looked at the file in front of her. She did not look impressed. "We are here on the matter of Hughes versus Hughes et al., Judge Vance said. Petitioner seeks a preliminary injunction regarding property access and title filings. Respondent seeks to dismiss. Let us keep this brief. Mr. Sterling, you represent the respondents?" Mr. Sterling, my family's lawyer, stood up. He was a man with a tan that was too deep for winter and a voice that oozed fabricated empathy. "Your Honor," Sterling began, placing a hand on his chest, "this entire motion is a tragic misunderstanding. We have a family here that is deeply concerned for the mental well-being of their youngest daughter. The petitioner, Riley, has a history of, let us call it, emotional fragility." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Sloane put a hand on my arm. Her touch was cool and firm. "Don't react." It said, "Let them dig." "My clients," Sterling continued, gesturing to my parents, "have been managing the family assets for decades. The document in question, the transfer to the family trust, was not a theft. It was a protective measure. Riley had just made a massive financial purchase, impulsively, miles away from her support system. Frank Hughes was simply ensuring that the asset was protected under the family umbrella, as he has always done. He turned to Tessa. "And the incident at the house? This was not an invasion, Your Honor. This was a wellness check. Tessa Hughes drove 2 hours with friends to celebrate her sister, to bring food, to ensure she was settling in. When they arrived, Riley became hysterical. She locked them out. She called the police on her own flesh and blood. These are the actions of someone in crisis, not someone who needs a restraining order against the people who love her." Diane let out a small, audible sob. It was perfectly timed. "We ask that the order be dismissed," Sterling finished, "and that the parties be referred to family mediation." Judge Vance looked at Sterling. Then she looked at me. "Ms. Mercer?" Sloane stood up. She did not use flowery language. She did not talk about feelings. She picked up a single piece of paper. "Your Honor," Sloane said, her voice dry and cutting. "Counsel speaks of love and wellness. I would like to speak about timestamps." She walked to the podium. At 10 o'clock in the morning on closing day, Riley Hughes became the sole legal owner of the property. At 12:14 in the afternoon, 2 hours later, a user logged into eDocs Direct and attempted to record a quitclaim deed transferring 50% of that property away from my client. Sloane held up the paper. "This was not a protective measure. This was a stealth transaction. My client was not informed. She did not sign it. The signature on the document is a digital forgery." "Objection," Sterling said lazily. "My client had power of attorney in the past. He assumed—" "The power of attorney expired 3 years ago," Sloane snapped. "An assumption is not a legal defense for forgery." She turned back to the judge. "But let us address the wellness check. Mr. Sterling claims Tessa Hughes arrived to support her sister. He claims the entourage was there for a celebration." Sloane picked up a second document. This was the one I had almost forgotten about, the technical report from the e-recording vendor that Sloane had subpoenaed. "This is the metadata from the upload of the forged deed," Sloane said. "The document was uploaded at 12:14. The IP address traces back to a commercial internet account registered to Sunroom Studios, LLC." Tessa shifted in her seat. She looked down at her hands. "The notification email for the account," Sloane continued, "is inance@sunroomstudios.coent. That is the corporate email address of the third respondent, Tessa Hughes." Sloane paused to let that sink in. "Your Honor, Frank Hughes did not just try to protect an asset. He used his daughter's business infrastructure to commit title fraud. And Tessa Hughes did not just go for a visit. She provided the digital weapon. That is circumstantial, Sterling argued. Many people have access to that office. Perhaps, Sloane said. But let us look at the intent. She turned to the bailiff. I would like to enter Petitioner's Exhibit C, a screenshot of a text message sent from Tessa Hughes to Riley Hughes at 12:05 in the afternoon, 9 minutes before the deed was uploaded. The bailiff handed the printed screenshot to the judge. I watched Judge Vance read it. I knew exactly what it said. I'm coming in 2 hours, 12 people, bringing cameras, and the follow-up. Bring extra towels. Don't embarrass me in front of my friends. Sloane leaned into the microphone. Your Honor, does a sister conducting a wellness check on a fragile sibling tell her to bring extra towels and not embarrass her? Does a concerned family member bring 12 people and a camera crew to a mental health crisis? Sloane turned and pointed at Tessa. They did not go there to help. They went there to film content. They went there because they believed the deed would be recorded by 2 o'clock, and they wanted to capture the moment they took control of the house on camera. It was a production. Your Honor, my client was just a prop. The silence in the courtroom was different now. It wasn't the bored silence of procedure. It was the sharp, electric silence of a lie being dismantled. Judge Vance looked up from the screenshot. She took off her reading glasses. She looked directly at Tessa. Ms. Hughes, the judge said. Tessa jumped slightly. She stood up. Yes, Your Honor? You are the owner of Sunroom Studios? Yes, Tessa said. Her voice was small. Do you deny that the email address associated with the fraudulent filing belongs to your company? Tessa looked at Sterling. Sterling gave a small, imperceptible shake of his head. Don't answer. But Tessa was not a lawyer. She was an influencer. She was used to spinning narratives, not navigating perjury traps. She tried to pivot. Your Honor, Tessa said, her voice gaining a little strength. My company has many accounts. We handle a lot of documents. My father helps with the books sometimes. I didn't know exactly what he was filing. I just gave him the login because he said he needed to help Riley with paperwork. So you gave him access, Judge Vance said. Well, yes, Tessa stammered. But I didn't know it was a deed. And the text message, that was just banter. We joke like that. I brought cameras because I vlog my life. It wasn't malicious. You told your sister not to embarrass you, Judge Vance repeated the words from the text. That does not sound like banter. That sounds like a director giving notes to an actor. I have a brand to protect, Tessa blurted out. Riley knows that. She knows my image is my livelihood. I just wanted everything to look nice. So you admit, the judge said, her voice dropping to a dangerous chill, that the purpose of the visit was to maintain your brand image? Tessa froze. She realized she had walked right off the cliff. No, I mean, it was both, she whispered. Frank stood up abruptly. The chair legs scraped loudly against the floor. Your Honor, this is ridiculous, Frank blustered. He puffed out his chest, trying to use the intimidation tactics that worked in boardrooms. I take full responsibility for the filing. My daughter had nothing to do with it. I was acting as the head of this family. I have the right to secure family property. Sit down. Mr. Hughes, Judge Vance said. I will not sit down, Frank shouted. I paid for that girl's college. I paid for her first car. She is ungrateful. That house is effectively mine because without me, she would be nothing. I filed that deed because she is not competent to manage $1 million asset. You filed it, Sloane interjected calmly, using a signature that you traced from an old birthday card? Frank turned purple. It was an administrative proxy. Mr. Hughes, Judge Vance said. Her voice was not loud, but it stopped Frank mid-breath. You just admitted on the record to signing a legal instrument on behalf of another adult without her power of attorney, and you admitted to doing so to seize control of an asset you did not pay for. It is family business, Frank argued. The courts shouldn't be involved in domestic disputes. When you forge a deed and upload it to the county recorder, Judge Vance said, it stops being a domestic dispute and starts being a felony against the state. She looked at the papers in front of her. She picked up her pen. The court finds that the petitioner has established a significant likelihood of success on the merits of the quiet title claim. The evidence suggests a coordinated effort to defraud the property owner. She looked at Tessa. Ms. Hughes, your claim that this was a wellness check is contradicted by your own digital footprint. The court is not a stage for your content. And the police are not props for your drama. She looked at Diane, who had stopped crying and was now staring at her husband with a look of pure horror. The temporary restraining order is converted to a preliminary injunction, Judge Vance ruled. It will remain in effect until the trial concludes. The respondents are barred from the property, barred from contacting the petitioner, and barred from filing any documents with the county recorder regarding this parcel. She signed the order with a sharp scratch of her pen. Furthermore, the judge continued, looking at Frank, given the admission of unauthorized signing and the evidence of electronic tampering, I am forwarding the transcript of this hearing and the evidence packet to the district attorney's fraud unit for review. Frank's jaw dropped. You are criminalizing this? You criminalized it when you hit upload, sir. Judge Vance said, Bailiff, clear the court. She banged the gavel. It wasn't a loud bang. It was just a tap, but it sounded like a door slamming shut on my entire childhood. Mr. Sterling was already packing his briefcase. He looked at Frank and whispered, I deal with civil litigation. Frank, you are going to need a criminal defense attorney. Tessa was staring at me. Her face was pale, stripped of all its influencer glow. She looked small. She looked young. Riley, she mouthed across the aisle. I didn't lip-read, I'm sorry. I lip-read, fix this. She still didn't get it. She thought I could just wave a hand and make the judge go away. She thought I could edit the recording. I stood up. I picked up my bag. Let's go. Sloan, I said. I walked past them. I didn't look at my father, who was slumped in his chair, looking suddenly very old. I didn't look at my mother, who was finally crying for real. I didn't look at Tessa. I walked out of the courtroom and into the hallway. The air was cooler out here. You did good, Sloan said. You didn't say a word. I didn't have to, I said. The text messages spoke for me. The DA will pick this up, Sloan said. Frank is in real trouble. Tessa too, if they dig into the company funds. I know, I said. How do you feel? Sloan asked. I thought about it. I thought about the beach house. I thought about the silence I had bought. I thought about the look on Tessa's face when the judge read her own words back to her. I feel, I said, checking my watch, like going home. I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining. I had a permanent injunction in my pocket. My phone was silent because I had blocked them all. But as I walked to my car, I knew it wasn't completely over. The legal battle was won, but the social war was just beginning. Tessa had lost the court case, but she still had her platform, and a narcissist without a legal leg to stand on usually resorts to the court of public opinion. I got into my car and checked my notifications. There was one alert from the security system at the beach house. Motion detected. Driveway. My heart skipped a beat. They were all here at the courthouse. Who was at the house? I opened the app. I pulled up the live feed. It wasn't a car. It was a delivery truck. A massive bouquet of white lilies was being placed on my porch. I zoomed in on the card attached to the flowers. The resolution was high enough to read the bold print. It wasn't from my family. It was from Sunroom Studios. Tessa had scheduled a congratulations delivery 2 days ago, assuming she would be staying there by now. It was an automated gesture of love, pre-ordered and paid for by the company credit card. I watched the delivery driver walk away. The flowers sat there, beautiful and poisonous, a reminder that to my sister, love was just another scheduled transaction. I put the car in gear. I was going to go home, and I was going to throw them in the trash, and then I was going to change the locks one more time, just to be sure. The week following the preliminary hearing was not defined by screaming arguments or dramatic confrontations. It was defined by the relentless, quiet efficiency of the legal machine clearing its throat. I did not go back to the courthouse. I did not have to. I sat in my living room, watching the ocean turn from gray to blue and back to gray, while the team I had hired dismantled my family's leverage piece by piece. The first victory came from the Title Insurance Council. Jason and his senior partners did not treat the fake deed as a family squabble. They treated it like a tumor. They filed a quiet title action that was so aggressive it barely left room for a defense. Because the judge had already flagged the document as likely fraudulent in the preliminary hearing, the process was accelerated. I received the email on a Tuesday morning. It was a copy of the court order expunging the Hughes Family Trust claim from the record. It declared the document void ab initio from the beginning. It was as if their attempt had never happened, wiped clean from history, leaving my name standing alone on the title like a flag planted on a conquered peak. But we did not stop there. I went back to the Bayshore Records office one last time. Patricia was there, wearing the same reading glasses. She took the court order I handed her, read it, and gave me a rare, tight smile. She typed a command into her terminal that placed a permanent identity verification lock on my parcel number. From this moment forward, if anyone wanted to file a lien, a deed, or even a mortgage against my house, they could not do it electronically. They could not do it by mail. They would have to stand in front of Patricia, present government-issued photo identification that matched my face, and provide a thumbprint. My father could try to hack every password I owned, but unless he could physically cut off my thumb and wear my face, he was never touching my property again. The second wave of consequences hit closer to home. Seaglass Dunes did not like drama. They liked exclusivity. And thanks to the police report and the court order, my family was no longer just annoying. They were a liability. Darius Cole sent me a formal memo from the board of directors. It was short and brutal. It listed Tessa Hughes, Frank Hughes, and Diane Hughes as prohibited persons. Their names were entered into the gate security system with a do not admit flag in bright red. The memo went further. It stated that because the initial incident involved a convoy of vehicles blocking fire lanes and unauthorized commercial filming, any vehicle associated with the Sunroom Studios entourage that attempted to enter the community perimeter would not just be turned away, it would be immediately towed at the owner's expense. The community I had feared was too strict had become my personal fortress. The rules were no longer a cage. They were the iron bars keeping the wolves out. Then came the financial blow. Sloan Mercer did not believe in defense. She believed in scorching the earth. She had listed Sunroom Studios as a respondent in the lawsuit. That gave her the legal right to notify relevant parties of the litigation. She sent formal letters to the brands that Tessa worked with. They were not emotional letters. They were standard legal notices informing the companies that their brand ambassador was currently the subject of a civil fraud injunction involving the misuse of corporate funds. Corporations are allergic to fraud. They are terrified of brand safety risks. I found out the result not from Sloan, but from social media. I was monitoring Tessa's accounts from a burner profile. On Thursday, she posted a vague, tearful story about partners who don't understand loyalty and taking a break to focus on mental health. A quick check of her bio showed that the link to a major skincare brand, her biggest contract, was gone. She had lost the contract. The wellness retreat that was supposed to launch her new series had instead torched her revenue stream. She had wanted to use my house to build her brand, but instead, the house had swallowed it whole. My parents were silent. The silence was heavy. But it was the silence of people who realized they were standing in a trap. Frank and Diane had spent their lives manipulating people with guilt and obligation. They were used to arguments where facts were flexible and history could be rewritten, but they did not know how to argue with an IP log. They did not know how to gaslight a timestamp. They realized that the system they tried to exploit, the deeds, the filings, the courts, was not a weapon they could control. It was a massive, indifferent machine that captured everything. It had captured their fingerprints on the paper. It had captured the device ID of the computer used to upload the forgery. It had captured the GPS data of their phones. They weren't fighting me anymore. They were fighting evidence. And evidence does not care if you are a good mother or a devoted father. Tessa tried one last time. It was Friday evening. The sun was setting, casting long, golden shadows across my living room floor. My phone buzzed. I had blocked her number, but she had used a spoofing app to get a message through. "Riley, please, this is getting out of control. Dad is talking about selling the lake house to pay for lawyers. Mom is a wreck. We are sisters. Can't we just drop this? I promise I will apologize. I will do whatever you want. Just let me come over so we can talk face to face. Please." I stared at the screen. A week ago. That message would have broken me. The guilt would have flared up. I would have thought about the lake house where we spent summers. I would have thought about my mother crying. I would have opened the door, but I read the text again. I looked for the accountability. I looked for the admission that she had tried to steal from me. It wasn't there. It was just fear. She wasn't sorry she did it. She was sorry she was losing. She wanted to come over face to face because she knew that in person. She could manipulate me. She knew that on a text chain. She was creating more evidence. I did not reply. I took a screenshot. I opened my email and forwarded it to Sloan with a simple subject line. Violation of preliminary injunction. Timestamp 6:42 p.m. I didn't need to say no. The judge would say it for me. The final hearing was a formality. My family did not show up. Their new criminal defense lawyer had advised them that appearing in civil court to argue about the property could expose them to more liability in the pending criminal investigation. They entered a plea of nolo contendere regarding the civil injunction. No contest. It was a total surrender. The judge made the order permanent. The temporary restraining order became a permanent injunction. They were barred from coming within 500 feet of me or my property indefinitely. The title was declared clean and quieted in my name solely. Sunroom Studios was ordered to pay my legal fees as damages for the fraudulent filing. It was over. I drove back to the beach house. I called a locksmith. It was the third time I had called him in 10 days. He was a gruff, older man who didn't ask questions. "Change them all?" he asked, looking at the perfectly good locks on the doors. "All of them," I said. "And I want the deadbolts reinforced." He worked for an hour. When he was done, he handed me a new set of keys. They were heavy, cool, and silver. They didn't feel like the keys I had received at closing. Those keys had felt like permission. These keys felt like ownership. I walked through the house. I turned off the lights in the guest rooms. I didn't need to check them for intruders anymore. I went to the kitchen and opened the drawer where I kept the Sea Glass Dunes binder. I took out 2 pieces of paper. The first was a certified copy of the final court judgment, stamped with the golden seal of the Superior Court. The second was a printout of the title clear report from the insurance company, showing my name as the 100% fee simple owner with 0 clouds, 0 liens, and 0 trusts. I put them into a thick manila envelope. I addressed it to Tessa Hughes at her studio address. I didn't write a letter. I didn't write a manifesto about how much they had hurt me or how toxic they were. I didn't ask for an apology. I didn't need one. An apology is just words. And I was done with words. I deal in documents now. I took a sticky note and wrote 2 words on it. Boundary, recorded. I stuck it to the front of the court order. I sealed the envelope. I walked out to the mailbox at the end of my driveway. The air was salty and fresh. The security patrol car drove by. The officer waved at me. I waved back. I dropped the envelope into the slot. I walked back up the driveway. I didn't go inside immediately. I sat on the steps of my porch. The sun had gone down, and the stars were coming out over the ocean. It was dark, but it wasn't scary. I listened. There were no cars revving their engines. There were no cameras clicking. There were no phones buzzing with demands. There was no one telling me I was selfish, or crazy, or ungrateful. There was just the sound of the waves hitting the sand, rhythmically, steadily. It was the most expensive sound in the world, and for the first time in my life, I could afford it. I closed my eyes and breathed in the salt air. I wasn't Riley the daughter, or Riley the sister, or Riley the victim. I was Riley Hughes, the homeowner, and my house was finally, truly, quiet. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening on your commute, at work, or maybe while relaxing in your own peaceful space? Please let me know in the comments below to share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the Lucy Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the like button to help this story reach even more people.